Long ago, in a small village in the kingdom of Magadha, there lived a young man named An Suman. He wasn't a bad person, but he carried within him a temperamental, impulsive, and impatient nature. He often reacted immediately to anything that displeased him. A single criticism would ignite his anger. A probing question could spark a heated argument. It was as if there was always a fire simmering inside him, ready to explode. At first, the neighbors were patient with him, but over time, people began to avoid him. He could feel it, even if no one said it aloud. The hesitant glances, the interrupted conversations when he arrived, the whispers behind his back. A quiet loneliness began to surround An Suman, leaving him adrift in his own life. One night, unable to sleep, he sat by the fire, eyes fixed on the fading embers. A question stirred in his heart. Could it be that I am the reason life feels so tense and exhausting? But as usual, that thought was quickly extinguished by the pride that still lingered in his heart. Until one day, An Suman heard villagers whispering that the Buddha was teaching in a forest nearby. Stories of his wisdom, compassion, and serenity swept like a breeze through An Suman's parched spirit. For some reason, a faint hope rose within him, like a flicker of light in the night. Maybe I'll find the answer I've been searching for there, he thought. The next morning, before dawn, An Suman set off into the forest. Beneath the shade of the Bodhi trees, hundreds of people sat in silence, listening to the Buddha teach. He didn't speak in lofty or academic terms. Every word was simple, yet somehow it sank deep into the heart. While speaking on the topic of inner transformation, the Buddha paused and said with a calm voice, "If you truly wish to change your life, learn to remain silent in 10 situations." An Suman felt as if those words struck something within him. A clear voice echoed inside. That's exactly what I need. After the talk, he shyly approached the Buddha, bowed, and pleaded, "Blessed One, you spoke of 10 situations where we must be silent. Please teach me. Help me step out of this fog I live in." The Buddha looked at him with kind eyes and smiled. "The seed of change has already sprouted in you, An Suman. But to help it grow, you'll need persistence, discipline, and the honesty to look at yourself. If you're ready, come with me. I'll teach you, step by step." Without hesitation, An Suman nodded. From that moment on, his journey inward had begun. First lesson: when criticized, be silent. In their first meditation session by the riverside, the Buddha gently asked, "When is the first moment you must be silent?" An Suman was quiet. The Buddha answered, "When others criticize you." And then he shared a story. "One day, someone came and cursed me with heavy insults. I said nothing. I just listened. When he grew tired and fell silent, I asked him, 'If someone offers a gift and I do not accept it, to whom does it belong?' He replied, 'It still belongs to me.' I said, 'Then so it is with your insults. If I do not accept them, they remain with you.' Hearing this, something lit up inside An Suman. Reacting is instinct. Silence is mastery. For the first time, he realized that to fight back isn't always strength. Sometimes, silence is the sharpest weapon of all. Second lesson: when arguments arise, be silent. A few days later, the Buddha said, "The second place where you must be silent is in the midst of conflict." He then told the story of 2 farmers who were arguing over a boundary line. Each insisted the land was theirs. When the Buddha asked them, "When you were born, did you bring that land with you? When you die, will you be able to take it with you?" They both fell silent. The Buddha turned to An Suman and said, "You see, arguments are clashes of ego, not paths to truth. Silence doesn't mean surrender. It means pausing long enough to see what lies beneath." An Suman nodded, his eyes deeper than before. He understood that peace isn't found in victory or defeat, but in not letting the heart be stirred into chaos. After the first few days by the Buddha's side, An Suman began to feel a subtle shift within himself. It wasn't loud or sudden, but like a cool breeze sweeping across the dryness in his heart, soothing the flames that had once roared so easily. The Buddha's teachings on the power of silence fell like drops of water on stone, persistent, steady, and full of patience. And one morning, while the mist still lingered, the Buddha looked at An Suman with gentle eyes. Today, I will show you the next 3 moments when a wise person should remain silent. Listen not only with your ears, but with your heart. Lesson 3. When angry, be silent. The Buddha asked, "Do you still get angry often?" An Suman lowered his head. "Blessed One, I still feel anger, but I am learning not to let it erupt into action." The Buddha smiled and shared. Once, there was a disciple, very intelligent but quick-tempered. One day he was harshly insulted. He immediately lashed out, raising his voice, disturbing the entire monastery. Later, I asked him, "When water is stirred and muddy, can you see the bottom?" He replied, "No, Master." I said, "When you're angry, your mind is just as clouded. That's not the time to act, to decide, or especially, to speak." He paused, looking An Suman in the eye. "Silence in anger is saving yourself from words you'll regret. Anger is a fire that can burn down the forest of your merit. But if you choose silence, you're planting a seed of compassion in your heart." An Suman felt a wave of emotion rise, part shame, part gratitude. For years he had hurt others simply because he didn't know how to stay silent in his fury. Lesson 4. When sad, be silent. That afternoon, rain began to fall. Drops tapped gently on the leaves like whispers of the earth and sky. The Buddha glanced upward, then said quietly, "The 4th moment to be silent is when your heart is filled with sadness." An Suman was surprised. "But Blessed One, isn't it better to share sadness in order to lighten the heart?" The Buddha nodded. "Some sorrows should be shared. But at times, silence helps you hear yourself more clearly." He continued, "Once, I sat meditating beneath a tree on a gloomy evening. My heart was heavy from witnessing the suffering of countless beings. I didn't say a word. I simply sat still, breathing with the sadness. And I realized, even sorrow has its own rhythm. If you listen, it dissolves like clouds after the rain." He turned to An Suman. "When you're sad, don't rush to suppress it or run from it. Also, don't rush to speak, for words spoken in sorrow often lack clarity. Be silent, to understand yourself before expecting others to understand you." Tears welled in An Suman's eyes. He realized how many times in the past, not understanding his own sadness, he had unknowingly spread more pain to others. Lesson 5. When provoked, be silent. One morning, as the forest still slumbered, the Buddha and An Suman walked together. Along the path, the Buddha asked, "If someone openly insults and provokes you, what will you do?" After a pause, An Suman answered, "I will try to remain silent, but I think it would be very difficult." The Buddha smiled kindly. "That's exactly why you must learn this. When provoked, silence is not weakness. It is strength held within." He told a story. "Once, a Brahmin came to see me and hurled insults, curses, and contempt. I said nothing. When he finished, I simply asked, 'Do you often give gifts to others?' He said, 'Of course.' I asked, 'And if the person doesn't accept the gift?' He said, 'Then it remains with me.' I said, 'Just like that. The words you speak, if I don't accept them, they remain with you.'" The Buddha looked at An Suman, his voice calm and grounded. "Silence in the face of provocation is the declaration of someone who governs himself. Do not let the anger of others rob you of your own peace." End of one phase, beginning of another. An Suman felt his mind clearing, like a lake settling after years of being stirred by reaction, rage, and careless speech. He began to see silence not as avoidance or weakness, but as a quiet strength, a daily practice of presence. The Buddha gently placed a hand on his shoulder, as if to pass on a little more compassion. You've reached halfway, An Suman. But remember, understanding something is one thing. Living it, that is the true path. That morning, An Suman woke earlier than usual. The sky had yet to brighten, and a thin layer of mist still hugged the forested hills. The air was so pure, it made even breathing feel light. Within him, it felt as though a space had been cleared. No more anger, no more unrest. Only a quiet stillness, like the surface of a lake at dawn. But the Buddha knew. The journey of transformation was not yet complete. Finer challenges still lay ahead. In a calm voice, he said, "Today I will teach you the final 3 moments when a wise person should remain silent. These are more subtle, but no less important. Lesson 6. When you don't know the truth. Be silent." The Buddha picked up a handful of sand. "See this? It is the truth. But what if we judge the whole handful based on a single grain?" An Suman nodded. The Buddha shared, "Long ago, a monk heard a rumor that someone in the village had committed a wrong. Without verifying it, he began preaching against the person, warning others to stay away. Later, the person was proven innocent, and the monk was harshly criticized for his quick judgment. He came to me and said, 'Blessed One, I only wanted to prevent harm. Why am I to blame?' I told him, 'Even if your intention is good, if you speak without knowing enough, you plant seeds of confusion and harm.'" The Buddha looked at An Suman, kind but firm. To be silent when you don't fully know is a mark of both wisdom and compassion, because words, once spoken, are like arrows released, impossible to take back. An Suman's heart tightened. He remembered moments when he had judged others hastily, having only heard one side. Those memories now pierced his mind like needles, reminders that speaking in ignorance is one of life's gravest mistakes. Lesson 7. When no one listens, be silent. One hot midday, under the shade of a sala tree, the Buddha asked, "Have you ever spoken the truth, yet no one listened?" An Suman sighed. "Yes, many times. I felt helpless, frustrated, even angry." The Buddha nodded, his eyes reflective. When someone is drunk, you cannot reason with them. When the heart is clouded with prejudice, even the brightest truth will be rejected. Once, I went alms-seeking in a village where people had been misled by another sect. They cursed me, spat at me, refused to listen. I bowed my head and walked away in silence. A monk later asked, "Blessed One, why didn't you use your wisdom to reach them?" I answered, "Because they weren't ready to hear." In that moment, silence was the most compassionate response. The Buddha turned to An Suman. "Speaking when no one listens is like sowing seeds on stone. Do not be silent out of fear. Be silent out of understanding. Flowers bloom only when the soil is ready." A great lightness rose in An Suman's chest. He realized that it's not always the message that's wrong, but the timing or the receiver's readiness. Lesson 8. When there's no need to speak, be silent. At last, as the golden light of sunset stretched across the earth, the Buddha invited An Suman to sit beside him. A gentle breeze passed. For a few minutes, the Buddha said nothing. The silence was so deep, An Suman could hear his own heartbeat. Then the Buddha spoke, his voice like a distant bell. "When there's nothing that must be said, be silent." An Suman looked puzzled. "But how will I know when that moment is?" The Buddha smiled, full of knowing. "It's like standing before a ripe golden field. You don't need to say anything to know it's harvest time. Sometimes your presence, a look, a smile, or a gentle touch, says everything that words cannot. Language has limits, but silence contains what words never could. The Buddha gently concluded, "You don't need to speak to be seen. You don't need to speak to matter. Speak only when your words bring clarity, compassion, and peace. Otherwise, let silence be your companion." That night, An Suman sat alone by the stream, gazing up at the stars. He no longer needed to ask questions. He no longer needed to explain the past. His heart felt like the night sky, vast, quiet, and filled with sparkling clarity. Silence was no longer something difficult or forced. It had become a part of him, a practice, a friend, a reflection of a heart learning to know itself, to know life, and to understand the quiet strength of stillness at the right moment. That morning, the sun rose behind the Himalayas, its warm light pouring through the meditative forest. An Suman knelt before the Buddha, his eyes misty, not with sorrow, but with the quiet knowing that it was time to return to the world. 3 months of silent retreat, 8 profound lessons from the Enlightened One, and countless nights of meditation in the dark woods, all had deeply transformed his heart. Now, silence was no longer suppression, but the conscious choice of an awakened soul. The Buddha gently placed a hand on his head and said with compassion, "You have learned enough. Now go back to life, live in the world, but do not be swayed by it. Let the silence within you become a refuge for others." When An Suman returned, the village was unchanged, but he was not. People whispered, "Is that the hot-tempered boy from before?" "It can't be. He looks calm, almost like a monk." He didn't respond, just smiled. No defense, no explanation. He knew. Life itself would feel the change in him. Words were no longer needed. His aging father, whom he had once fought bitterly, was now frail. One day his father asked weakly, "Do you not resent me?" An Suman held his hand and looked into his eyes. "I've learned that some things should be spoken through compassion, not through words." His father wept, not because of the answer, but because of the peace he saw in his son's gaze. In time, An Suman began teaching children in the village, helping the poor, healing with herbs, and often simply listening to others pour out their hearts. One person asked, "Why don't you advise me? Why say nothing?" An Suman replied, "Sometimes what people need most isn't advice, but someone who truly listens. Silence can heal too, if we're truly present for one another." An Suman had become a quiet but warm presence. He didn't preach, argue, or try to prove himself, yet anyone near him felt at peace, as if his stillness held something deep and kind. One day, a young man came to him in anger. "Do you think you're above us? Why don't you speak out against the injustice in this village?" An Suman looked at him calmly. No reaction, no defense. He replied gently, "Anger cannot heal anger. Only understanding and clear, silent presence can do that." The young man was stunned. An Suman's calm was like a mirror reflecting the boy's own rage. No one won, no one lost. Only a light of inner clarity remained. Conclusion. Silence is not the absence of voice. It is the intentional choice of an awakened mind. In a noisy world, the one who knows when to be silent is the one speaking the most noble voice of compassion and wisdom. Years passed. The once troubled village grew more peaceful. People spoke less, listened more, and began to understand one another better. They whispered it was because of An Suman, the one who brought the Buddha's silence back home. But An Suman never saw himself as special. He often said, "I'm just someone who learned not to speak when it's unnecessary, and to speak only when words nourish the heart." Each afternoon, he would sit beneath a tree. He didn't preach or teach, just sat in stillness. Yet every day, people came to sit near him, not for anything in particular, but drawn by the peace that radiated from his quiet presence. Toward the end of his life, someone asked him, If you could leave only one message for the world, what would it be? An Suman smiled, closed his eyes for a moment, then spoke slowly. Be silent when anger arises. Be silent when your words may harm. Be silent when no one is listening, but always listen with your heart. For the silence that comes from inner clarity is the most powerful voice of all.